Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Trig Podcast of Joy and Ghost TV on this beautiful, what is today? Wednesday, September 11th. Amazing, huh? It's been now 20 years since that horrible morning back in New York City, but talking today about something that is really tragic, and yet we need to bring hope to this conversation, and that is the suicide of megachurch pastor Jared Wilson yesterday, 30 years of age. Two small, beautiful boys. I don't know if you saw the picture in the news. His beautiful wife. And the thing that is ironic is that he was a mental health advocate. He had a nonprofit called, I think it was called Anchor of Hope. I could be wrong, but it was called Anchor of Hope. And if you know Greg Laurie, he's a pastor here in the area in Riverside of a mega church called Harvest Christian Fellowship. And they do the Harvest Crusades, and just an amazing man. And this young pastor, 30 years of age, I don't know all the details, but he took his life yesterday, Tuesday, which I think yesterday was the National Suicide Prevention Day. And it's just tragic. He spoke about mental health. I was reading his Twitter timeline this morning and last night, and he even posted something about him looking up suicidal or how to commit suicide in, I don't know, the most careful way. I'm not really sure. I don't deal with suicidal thoughts. I'm thankful for that. As you know, my journey is one more of anxiety and some depression, but mostly anxiety, fear and anxiety. And you have to understand that all these things are related, but they're not the same. Fear and shame is one thing. Anxiety is another thing. Depression is another thing. Suicidal thoughts or bipolar, or these things are all, yes, in the same circle, I guess, of mental health issues, but they're not the same. And so you have to know kind of who to talk to. And now also you have to know that not everyone, of course, deals with this type of stuff. The statistics are that maybe 30% of people, 25%, maybe as high as 40% of people deal with a chronic mental health type of problem or a clinical type of situation. And all these words are just horrible. It's like saying illegal aliens, or it's like saying, I don't know, these are all horrible words that people use, because there still isn't proper language for all this stuff. And so my story has been, of course, as I've said many times, one of anxiety and fear, and that stems from issues of separation and war and a lot of things that I've been through in my life that I've said and mentioned many times. Back in 2013, almost now 6 years ago, I think it was actually June, so it's been 6 years, I did a conference at my friend's church here in the area called Finding Grace Through Anxiety. And I brought my therapist, I brought my doctor, I brought my nurse on the stage, and we had about 100 people. I thought we'd have 4 or 5 people. 100 people showed up. I even had a taco lady. I had balloons, and I had beach balls at this thing. And we sang the happy song by Pharrell. And it was just one of those ahead of its time type of conferences that we did together. And it was just unbelievable. And I remember right after that conference, I had some Spanish leaders tell me, please do this in Spanish. And I moved on from the thing, unfortunately. I mean, it would have been so amazing to do more conferences and more trainings, but I moved on from it. And but then I got back into it about maybe 2 years later. After that, I actually went to Kay Warren's church. Pastor Rick Warren's wife, Kay Warren, they lost their son to suicide or death by suicide. I think it's been like maybe 10 years or 15 years. And so again, in one of those just supernatural moments, I called Kay Warren. Yep, that's what I do. I called Kay Warren, and her assistant called me back, and I said, would it be okay if I brought my gear and all of my, Goso TV set and my team and do an interview with Kay in your studios at Saddleback Church here in the area? And she said, sure, I would love that, because Kay is trying to get more into social media. And again, I was ahead of my time. I had my own TV show, meaning web TV show here 10 years ago. And I went and I interviewed Kay, and you can actually watch the interview as my most, of course, watched YouTube video. You can go to YouTube and type in my name and just look up Kay Warren. And it was just amazing. I actually even sang a song that I wrote about my own bouts with anxiety called How Do You Feel? And I brought my Goso mugs. Kay spoke so eloquently about her own process with the loss of her son. Even though it was very difficult, and now I think he's in jail or in a mental institute. And I miss my neighbor, my young man friend, Matthew, who I've also mentioned here many times. I would love him and kiss him. I remember one day he's like this 6'10" young man. He's just huge. He would play basketball right here in our backyard when he was 6, 7, 8 years old. I took him to USC when I was working there. I played music with him. He was he is a great man and rapper, and how much I love hip hop. And so we would do beats here in my house. But he dealt with schizophrenia. And I remember one day telling me, Trig, I feel that people are afraid of me, but I'm actually afraid of them, that they think I'm going to hurt them, but I really don't want to hurt anybody. And it was tough with him. I remember one day I was coming home running, and he made like shooting motions up in the air towards me. And that's when I knew that this was just more than I could handle. And so it was a very difficult time working or loving Matthew, but my heart still is for him. So the conference in 2013, Finding Grace for Anxiety, was amazing. My time with Kay Warren was unbelievable. Working with Matthew next door here was just loving him. I wasn't his therapist. I was just his friend. It was incredible. And so in just a few minutes, I'm going to take a break, just a few minutes. I want to actually walk you through the basics of what I teach in terms of No More Anxiety or Finding Grace Through Anxiety, a little bit of what I taught at the conference 6 years ago, because I think that now is the time. That conference was ahead of its time, but even then there were 100 people in the room. I think it's time to talk about this again in the church as a pastor who often is criticized by well-meaning people about my openness with anxiety and my hope in Jesus. And yes, medication, and yes, therapy and coaching and prayer and satanic stuff and all this stuff that is not easy. There is no easy answer. And yet I am not going to stop talking about it. If anything, I regret having stopped 6 years ago, but God's timing is perfect. Now is the time. And I'm going to keep talking about this in the church, on the pulpit, on Sunday mornings, here in this show, not to drag you into my story, but to be an example of hope and of the struggles, so that your child, your teen, especially young adults. Obviously, I'm 50 years old. I'm no kid, but I especially want to help those young people in their teens and 20s as a life coach. I do have a certification in mental health advocacy from the Orange County Health Department. So I have that certification, but I'm not a therapist, of course, but I do have that certification. And most of all, I have my story, and I have the hope that I have in Jesus. And yet it's not perfect. It's not one way or another. It's not either you have hope or you're hopeless. It's a combination of both things. So in just a minute or so, I'm going to come back and do this training. I have some slides, and I'd love for you to share this if you're watching this maybe later tonight or tomorrow or whenever, so that other people can get the help that they need. So we'll be right back. Thanks so much for being here. All right, so I'm back. I had to do a few things to get ready for the slides here, but I think we got everything figured out. So let me get right into this presentation, how to overcome fear, anxiety, and depression. And once again, I'm not going to obviously solve all your problems with this, but this is my attempt at providing hope and tools for you or someone that you love. So let's get into it. By the way, you can leave me a comment anywhere where you're watching this, and it'll be here on the screen, and then we can discuss as needed. All right. Let me first just check that everything is looking amazing. Let me go back here a few slides to number 1 before we get started here. So there we go. Let me just check the feed here to that so that everything is sounding good and looking good. Leave me a comment below if everything looks amazing. Let's see here. Okay, so yes, see the slides aren't showing up. Okay, I have to press another button here. So just give me a moment here to turn that. There we go. So now that works. All right. So now I think you should be able to see that first image there. But let me just watch that really quick here. There's a little bit of a delay, but I think it should be working now. How to overcome fear, anxiety, and depression. Just a quick presentation here to help you. So let me just wait another second till this catches up. Okay, it seems to be working. Okay, so let me get rid of that box there at the bottom. It's kind of covering some of the stuff. So let me go back to that and see if I can make this smaller, perhaps. I wish I could make it transparent. Let me do that just for now. Get rid of that, and let's get into the presentation. Okay, so let's get into this. So how to overcome fear, anxiety, and depression. Let me just say as way of introduction that this is a very important conversation for us to have, especially in light of this young man, this pastor, 30 years of age, Jared Wilson, who died by suicide yesterday. He's a pastor of a mega church here in the area called Harvest Christian Fellowship with Greg Laurie. And he just went through this very horrible experience. He had been very open about his struggles with anxiety and depression, especially depression. And so I want to give you some of the things that I've learned through my own certification, my own years of training, my own experience, especially in terms of anxiety, and to give you hope or to give hope to someone that you love. So number 1 is to love yourself. You're not broken. I think that when you're in the middle of this, this dilemma or this battle, it's easy to feel unlovable. It's easy to blame yourself. It's easy to hear people's negativity. It's easy to feel like you're just not, that you're not good enough, that you're broken. And yes, of course, we all can say, of course, we're all broken, but the anxious person or a depressed person or a fearful person, they take it to another level. They really believe that they are not worth living. That's the problem with this whole thing of death by suicide is you continue to believe this lie, and even though everyone on the outside can tell you it's a lie and it's not true, and you have so many people that love you and Jesus loves you, there's something in your mind that's louder than all those voices that's telling you you're not broken. I mean, you're messed up. You are broken, and so that's why I start with this message is of loving yourself. I think that this young man, Jared, he had a nonprofit called Anchor of Hope. And I think one of his favorite hashtags was "You are not alone" or "You're not broken." It was something along those lines. And it was just a powerful, powerful statement. It's a hashtag. I think, more than anything, this is the message that people need to hear that deal with fear, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, is you're not broken. And even if they don't get it at first, you have to just keep saying it. There was, Billie Eilish, maybe you're familiar with this young 17, 18-year-old, amazing pop singer. She's an artist. I love her voice, her music, but she talks openly as well about suicidal thoughts and depression and anxiety. And like she says, it's good for her to do that. And I agree completely. What concerns me about her or anyone really that's in that same space or in that same place in their minds is where they don't have any hope. And that's why this message of love yourself, you're not broken, is so powerful. And so I don't know if it was Jared himself or someone on his team actually wrote Billie Eilish an open letter just saying, and it was so beautiful. It said, because, Billie Eilish just released a song called All Good Girls Go to Hell. All good girls go to hell. And, lyrics are lyrics, and I'm not going to criticize a title or the word hell or even what she's trying to say. I don't know what she's trying to say. But the letter was so beautiful because it said, Billie, no matter what, you're loved. It was a short, paragraph, 5 sentences. It wasn't 20 verses and all these things are powerful, but it was just a simple message of Jesus loves you. You're not alone. If you want to help someone in need and you don't know what to do, you know what? You do know what to do. Just simply tell them you're not alone and I love you. Tell them that you yourself love them. That's what whoever wrote this letter to Billie said is, I love you. I'm here for you. It's such a powerful statement to personalize this whole thing of love. Is that you, if it's your daughter, I love you. I am here for you. It may take years for that young person to listen, to hear that, to actually have those words change them. But it's about the only thing that sticks when you're that person. I know for me, when I'm in this space of anxiety, the only thing that helps me more than worship and prayer and Bible and therapy and pills and whatever is my wife's and my mom's statements. I love you, son. I love you. I'm here for you. You're not broken. That's really all you need as far as tools. That's the best thing. Don't feel helpless if you have someone in your family that deals with these things. This is what they need to hear. You're loved. I love you. Tell them as your mother, as your friend, as your parent, I love you. And even, if strangers need to hear this, meaning Billie Eilish, and she may or may not read that letter, if superstars, millionaires, artists, famous people need to hear this, imagine how much you and I need to hear this. Number 2 is know your triggers. Anxiety is not the same as being worried about a test or having phobias about speaking in public or spiders. It's not the same thing. Not everyone deals with clinical anxiety. And as I said, I don't like those words. I don't like clinical this or clinical that. It just makes it sound like you're not a human being. It's like saying illegal aliens and all these terms that don't speak well of people. But this is different than being worried about things. Like I said, 60% of people have no clue what this is. And so when they hear you talk about this, or when you hear these things, their mind doesn't quite get it. They're saying, well, what's wrong? Why? That's the main thing people ask. Why are you anxious? You have no reason to be anxious, right? Which, of course, is in and of itself a trigger for people who do deal with anxiety or depression. Know yourself, know your triggers. And so I know that for me, because of many things in my past, anything dealing with money or health is a trigger. As I said here many times, when I have a headache, I think I have pancreatic cancer. Just this year, from February till late July, just the last 6 months here, I had this pain in my stomach that moved to my back. I thought I needed gallbladder surgery. It sounds like a joke now to me. That's what anxiety does. Now, my triggers, I know what they were. I know exactly what happened to me in February of this year. I know exactly what happened to me June of 2019, June of 2018, June of 2017, all these June things. I hate June. You can call it trauma, PTSD. We have these things that happen in our lives, meaning for those that deal with this stuff. And it's like a choo-choo train, I call it. It's like a train around your Christmas tree. You have the caboose caboose, right? And then you have all the trucks, the wagons behind it that are being pulled by the caboose, right? I hope that's the right word. Yeah. That's what anxiety feels like. That trigger is like the caboose. And then it's not just that caboose that's telling you all these horrible things. It's everything that's attached to that. What happened to you last year, 2 years ago. It's all this kind of this chain of horrible moments that either people never helped you through or that people are still blaming you for. And you have these traumatic memories. I know it's true for me, that are there haunting you until you begin to process the stuff and heal from these triggers. And so you have to know people that trigger you. I mean, I have people that I just say, I'm not even going to look at you because I know they're going to trigger me towards that place. And instead of judging yourself or saying, well, I shouldn't this, or I should be better than this, what's all this should stuff about? Look at what's on the other side of shoulds or do's and don'ts. It could be what happened to this young man. Stop saying you should be better than this. You should know better. You should be a better Christian. That's not going to help you. You're condemning yourself. That's why I go back to number 1. Love yourself. You're not broken. Number 2, know your triggers. So people that are your triggers, avoid them. Situations, places, for me, are words. I think you have to know yourself. Like, how do you receive judgment? Is it written? Is it online? For me, it's auditory. I don't want to get into all the things that I'm thinking about right now. There's just so many moments where there have been people that literally wanted to destroy me, literally wanted to destroy my self-worth, anything that was good in me. And we're talking about Christian leaders in churches, as obviously, I've talked about this many times. Just out to destroy me. My point with all this is that when I hear things, it kills me. I'd rather, same thing with writing, when I read things that people send me texts or emails that are nasty and horrible. And so what I do with I delete that stuff. I literally throw stuff in the trash that's written down. Because I know that the way that I get triggered is by things that I see or things that I hear. You have to know what triggers you. Places, people. If someone says something to you, then you need to just simply take that and just throw it in the trash and avoid those triggers. Number 3, tell yourself the truth. And this is where now the hard work begins. This is something that no one can do for you if you're the person that's suffering. No one can tell yourself the truth. You can hear all kinds of input, and it's important to hear input from God, therapists, from mentors, etc. But these are tools that you have to implement. And this is the hard part about mental health stuff, is even though you're weak, you have to be strong to recover yourself. See, unlike breaking a bone, often we that deal with these things, we compare ourselves to people who break a bone. When I had my, quote, gallbladder issues, no one could see me with, I don't know, one of those bands, that people get when they go to the hospital. Because I never went to the hospital because I didn't need anything. But my mind was telling me that I might as well have had one of those bracelets. But when you can't show anyone the problem, it becomes difficult. And so when someone is, let's say, in the hospital, what happens when someone's in the hospital, especially someone that you love? You go visit them, you send them flowers, you pray for them all the time, you give them space, you send them, cards, and then you can't wait to see them up and about again, right? But when you're dealing with episodes, is what I call them, of deep or high anxiety or deep depression or deep shame or deep fear, and that's kind of how they feel, like bouts, then no one can see anything. And so therefore, no one comes to your aid. If anything, people criticize you all the time. So that's why my point here is you have to tell yourself the truth, because First, I can't pay $150 every day to go see my therapist. I mean, I wish it was free. And we'll get into how the church really should. I mean, this is like a no-brainer. I believe, I'll just say this, that free therapy should be like free Bible studies at churches. We have to have free therapy at church. Anyway, I'll just say that. But because we don't have all these tools, and they're super expensive and filled with shame and with stigma, you have to learn how to tell yourself the truth. And yet it's so difficult, because if someone did have, let's say, I don't know, neck surgery or eye surgery or something, you wouldn't expect them to heal themselves, right? You expect doctors and nurses and all kinds of tools and medication and stuff, right, to be there to help that patient. But in mental health, the bad news, I think it's really the bad news of this, what I call this silent killer, is that you have to heal yourself. And this is why mental health is so difficult. No one can heal you. All that the system can do is give you drugs or send you to jail, or in the church, I don't know, hopefully pray for you, if that. But without all these resources, you have to heal yourself. And this is why the patient or the person dealing with these issues needs to have people tell them, I love you all the time, especially during these bouts. And you can always tell when someone's in a bout. And I almost think that when we're in these bouts is almost we manifest physical stuff to get people's attention. It's almost like a trick that's not something that we're doing consciously, and yet maybe it's subconsciously something that we're doing, because no one can see our depression or our anxiety or the things that we feel or see, and because people criticize you all the time and you criticize yourself, it's almost like we manifest, oh, my ear hurts, oh, my back hurts, oh, my heart palpitations, all these somatic things. Somatic, soma means body, all these physical things, so that people will actually like give you an aspirin or massage your back or give you a hug, for goodness sake, even your family and friends. But you have to learn eventually to tell yourself the truth. And it's a spin cycle. If you're the anxious person, guess what you're not capable of doing? Telling yourself the truth. You have to really, I would say, this is really something that is very important to say. You almost have to be like a professional baseball or basketball player to survive. You have to have so much knowledge and trust and tools and really just downright to the strength to heal yourself, to tell yourself the truth. Because when you're depressed, all you hear is the negative stuff. When you're anxious, all you hear is the anxious thoughts. And you have to be the one, like in anything, like working out. No one can work out for you. You have to get out of bed. And yet this is so much more serious than working out. Because as I always call it, this is a silent killer. You can always see someone who's maybe not working out, right? But who can tell when someone's getting more and more anxious? You can see the signs: anger, frustration, loneliness, depression, as people call it, isolation, or acting out sexually, or consuming alcohol, or maybe disregarding their their responsibilities. I mean, there are physical things, meaning responsibilities that people are like, what's going on? Why are you acting this way? But no one can heal you except yourself. And what I mean is, you have to implement your own surgery. This is what's so difficult about this. It's almost like if you had a brain problem, you have to go in when you're the anxious person and go and heal yourself and like cut yourself open and do your own surgery on yourself. This is why the support is so important. This is why to love these people in these moments is so crucial. So let me move on. Number 3 is tell yourself the truth. Number 4, exercise, eat healthy foods, avoid negative people. Excuse me. This is practical stuff. So the first few were more like mindset. Now these are practical. These are so true. Yoga is probably has been my greatest life savior or whatever. It's helped me the most. I did yoga for 3 years in Colorado when I was experiencing high levels of vertigo, panic attacks, all these things, these episodes, these seasons of high anxiety, or for others with depression. I've dealt with some depression, but most anxiety. But yoga, there's something, at least for me, that works. Maybe for you it's hiking or just traditional working out, running or lifting weights or hiking or things like that, moving your body, walking. You know why exercise is important? It's not to lose weight. Yes, the endorphins are important. All those things, very important. But it's more of connecting or disconnecting your mind. Not that when you're on that walk or that run, you're not still thinking anxious thoughts. You still are. Not that depression, what? You think you want to go for a run when you're depressed? Of course not. But this is where you have to almost like do it almost like an out-of-body thing. You almost have to not be yourself to go work out. You almost have to like become someone else, become the old you that would want to go work out and go for that run. Because what happens when you're working out and you're in your body is that your brain suddenly has to focus on something else. See, and I could get very, I don't know, maybe scientific on this. I've read so many books on the science of anxiety and of mental health and fear, depression. When you're in these bouts, your brain is locked into that anxious thought. That's all that person can see, hear, feel. So when you're going for a run and your body literally has to think about not dying, because you're running and you're out of shape, and it's almost like the energy that your brain is putting into feeling depressed or anxious goes to your heart, because your heart has to pump more blood to survive. It goes to your feet. It goes to your legs. It goes to your muscles. It goes to your body. And I would say that maybe the greatest healing for the anxious, depressed person is to feel their body. I'm even going to say that hugs, if you're married, sex, I'm not trying to be, too crazy here, but to feel your body actually working is huge. You're going to say, Trig told me I need to have more sex, honey. I want to, experience anything. But this is so crucial, to be in your body. Eating is not a way to be in your body. Eating, meaning unhealthy stuff, makes you worse, makes you feel worse. When you're gaining weight or how many times have I been in this very room? I think a few months ago, I was eating vanilla wafers at 1 a.m. trying to manage my anxiety. Okay, so that's not what I'm talking about. Healthy foods do help. Nuts. Water, of course, smoothies, salads, salmon, pasta is not bad. Just all the stuff that we all know, right? You don't need some keto or crazy diet. This is not a health diet eating plan. This is about survival, about waking up your body, what the eating, and I'm not as much of an expert in the eating side of things as in other areas, but from what I've experienced, what eating healthy does is it gives you basically energy to go and work out and to go and get out of bed. It stimulates your brain and it feeds you all the right stuff. And then, as I said earlier, avoid negative people. But I said that earlier, avoid negative people. And I think that has to be said very loud and clear. You have to be very protective of your mental health. It doesn't matter if it's your mom, your church leader, it doesn't matter who it is. You have to protect your own life by saying no to certain people and situations, even if people criticize you. It's your life. Number 5 is seek a spiritual guide, counselor, therapist. This is trite. Obviously, everyone says this, and yet it's the hardest thing to do because of money or stigma or all the things I've mentioned. But the reason why this is important, let me tell you why this is so important, is because first you're hearing somebody else's opinion. You're hearing input. What the anxious, depressed person needs, as I said earlier, is guidance, is to hear to feel, to see something positive. And it has to be outside in input. You have to have somebody else tell you the truth, because you can't do it on your own most of the time until you're a professional. And so you have to start by having someone else be that voice. And as much as I love parents and good well-meaning people, they'll mix in a lot of judgment sometimes in there because they don't know what to do. They get desperate. See, what a therapist does for a spiritual guide is they don't get desperate with you. They don't say, come on. They never get to that. They're trained to not do that. So am I. I never get to that point with a person that I'm seeing where I'm like, come on now, what's wrong with you? Just get your act together. Psh, get out of here. That's what a trained professional does. They're trained to not be that way. Now, we as parents or your friends or your mom, either they're like, oh man, I don't know what to do. I love you. And as I said earlier, that's the main thing that people need to hear. Or most of the time, people just get tired of you. They're like, I don't know what to do, right? And so when that happens, that's when everyone feels terrible. So a spiritual guide, a counselor, a therapist, they're trained to listen without judgment and to give you guidance based on your life, not just on some book or some YouTube video. You know, I mean, if your therapy is YouTube, then you need to stop that. You need to actually see a human being. I have a therapist. I've seen him for 10 years. I love the man. He's my friend. I mean, I had him as I said, on a stage with me 6 years ago because I love this man. He is my father, my friend, my uncle, he's my best friend in this space. I can call him anytime, and it's not cheap. This is the problem. It should be free. It needs to be free in the church. But anyway, that's another podcast. And have the church pay for these therapists out of, I don't know, their building fund. Like, get rid of a few, I don't know, events and pay for a therapist. That's how I would do it. Because obviously therapists need also their income. But that's what a therapist or a spiritual guide does. They listen. They don't judge you. They give you pertinent, professional, and what I mean by professional is listening, professional guidance. I'm a certified mental health coach. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor, but I do have that training to listen, to guide without judgment. And you just need someone. I don't know who it is. Doesn't have to be me but you have to find someone if you want to get through this. Very important. Number 6, and this goes without saying, but I think it needs to be said. Stand against Satan. Jesus is greater than all of these problems. You know, for me, Jesus and anxiety hasn't always worked for me. Because have you ever heard a message at church just on anxiety that wasn't don't be anxious? Matthew 6. Let me just tell you, those verses, they don't help that much. Over time, as we mature and as we become, more balanced as humans, meaning those of us who deal with these things, those verses do ring true. But you are naive to think that this verse. Okay, let's just turn the tables, right? Love your enemies. Come on, why don't you love your enemies? It's right there. Love your enemies. Why are you still hating your ex? So that's what it feels like when someone says to us, Matthew 6, don't be anxious. Philippians 4, rejoice always. And so now with that said, for me, even though Jesus and anxiety haven't always played well together because no one has ever taught me how to do that, no sermons that I've ever heard talk about anxiety in non-judgmental, non-Matthew 6, non-Philippians 4 ways, but as in like a process and as in, with kindness, not with judgment or just with a simple answer. Because of that, I thought, well, I'm going to just do this here on my own with all these other tools. And thankfully, I've always gone to Christian therapists. I think that's important. Not because they're Christians, but because they will definitely bring Jesus into your plan and help you understand how Jesus and his word can and need to be a part of your solution. I don't think it's the only solution. I don't think it's 1% of your solution. I don't know what percentage it is. It's not that simple, but it needs to be in there. And I was reading an article about, how young people just hate church, don't go to church, don't do religion. This article gave me so much hope. It was saying that the way, I don't mean like the way, like some technique, but a way that the church and all this craziness, institution and religion, all this stuff, and Trump and white evangelical, all this criticism, right? That is mostly warranted, is that young people have against the church, that a way to restore this problem is to have the church provide free therapy. My services are free. You can come and talk to me for free. 40 minutes, 45 minutes for free. I could charge $100, $500, $1,000. I have video courses. When I did all this in 2013, I wasn't able to keep at it with conferences and then in Spanish, which I wish I had. But what I did do is I recorded 40, 50 hours of videos with slides and the whole thing. They're on my website now, and they do cost. But I'm telling you, I will provide all that stuff for free to someone who needs it. Because this has to be, now I do believe, as I said, that therapists or coaches need to be paid for these services. This is how we make our living, is through the church and these other services. But I would rather have the church pay me, or have, I don't know, my rich uncle somewhere pay me, so that I can do what I do and provide the content that I need, that you need, and provide free services to you, the individual. That really has to be the financial plan for therapy. I love that churches, I worked at a church that had a therapist, but it wasn't free, even for its members. Now, it was pretty discounted, like $20. So, I think that's fair. That way there's skin in the game, right? But I think it has to be free, so that people will over time come and see you, because just because it's free, or even if you get $50, I would pay people $100 to come see me. I would pay you $100 if you would come to see me or go see a therapist, because this is how urgent this is. This is not just pastors. This is movie stars. This is Billie Eilish. This is Selena Gomez. This is Justin Bieber. You name your favorite artist or politician, or I don't know. I mostly work with young people, so hip hop and fashion, and that's their world. And so those are the examples that I think about. But whoever it is that you're following or listening to their story, these individuals, they do have millions of dollars. And so when they get on Instagram, like Bieber recently did, and like, oh, God is helping me, he's paying $1,000 a week to go see a therapist. That is literally changing his life. You can't do that. And you can't just be like Bieber and like post, hey, I'm great now. He went through, it's like exercise. You have to actually go through a plan to overcome these things, including, as I said here, standing against Satan. And just like Bieber, it seems like he is following Jesus. Doesn't matter to me really that he's like, hey, I love Jesus now. It matters. But what I mean is, I just want him to be an example. But I wish he would say, oh, by the way, I just dropped $5,000 on a therapist, because that's what's real. It's not just that he's loving Jesus and has his wife and his fans. He dropped $5,000 last month on therapy, and maybe someone to make him healthy meals and exercise with him. My point is, there has to be a support system for you. And we don't have, 99% of people don't have $5,000 a month to do this, right? But yet what's the cost? if you don't do something. Death. How to stand on their own 2 feet, how to stand against Satan. Jesus is greater. There is no like one answer. For my process of 50 years, I've probably dealt with anxiety since I was like 5, is my guess. And who cares if it's biological, genetic, whatever, or what do they say? If it's nurture or nature, it doesn't matter. What matters is, how do I get better? Like, how do I get through this, right? That's what matters. And I hope these tools have helped, but it's about really a village of people surrounding one person. Your mom, your wife, if you're married, your husband, your kids, Jesus, a therapist, a coach, and all for free and all intentional. And this is the problem. No one wants that. No one wants to bother anyone with that. To me, because I'm in this space, it feels like 50% of people that I meet are dealing with this. They just hide it because they don't want to lose their job. Or if I wasn't a grown man and I don't know, just basically I don't care as much as I used to, I would hide all this stuff from my churches because I would be afraid that they want to get rid of me. I still fear that even to this day, not as much. And I think that everyone talking about this and all the unfortunate things that are happening, and guess what? This is going to get worse. Do you see anxiety going down over the next 10 years? No. Do you feel less anxious? Now, as I said, you may not be one of these people. You may be like, I'm fine. And yeah, you have your aches and pains. It's not the same thing. I don't know how to say it much clearer. It's not the same thing. Do not criticize others through your lens of what you feel, what you would do, how you don't feel that way. Stop criticizing those, especially those of us who are open about it and who are here to help people as we help ourselves. Stop saying, why do you talk so much about this junk? You talk about your backache and how you can't sleep at night. And I don't tell you to stop talking about that dumb not sleeping stuff. And I can see it in your eyes that you haven't slept in like a year. We need to be more accepting of each other for our brokenness. Brokenness isn't just sexual sin. You know how like in the church, the only brokenness that we talk about is screwing up with sex or, I don't know, I guess drugs, I guess. That's the only brokenness that we allow in the church is sexual stuff. Nobody talks about financial ruin. Nobody talks about drug addiction. I mean, some churches do. Nobody talks about any of these things. Definitely not about anxiety. Come on. Shouldn't you read the freaking Bible? What's wrong with you, right? All of that we need to get rid of. We need to teach people. And that's why I keep talking about this. And that's why maybe it's time this year, 2019 or 2020, to do another conference, Finding Grace Through Anxiety 2. Leave me a comment below if you're like, yes, please do one. And bring my therapists and bring my doctors and bring all of my people to provide hope and to guide the thousands and millions, especially young people that are serving in your churches, that are doing your sound, that are volunteering in the kids area, that are going to school, that are driving their cars and having jobs and all. They're online, that deal with this stuff, all behind the scenes. And guess who's paying the price? Their parents, because they feel alone. They have to like come at night like Nicodemus and hide so that no one sees that their kid's having problems. Man, I want those kids to become the pastors and leaders of the future church. And I want to be that bridge to them to say, I love you, I accept you, I am you, and I'm here to support you. And I think that that's how we're going to do this. And so, as I said, davidtrig.com/free coaching. If you need any of my services, maybe using someone to talk to for free, and pray that someone will pay me to do all this stuff. The church can drop $100,000 just for me to focus on this so that I can help people. And of course, I love pastoring and music and everything is beautiful. But this is so vital and this is so crucial and so, this is like the 9/11 of mental health. I think that yesterday and today is almost like the 9/11 of mental health. It's a very difficult day, a day of remembrance for these young, 30 years of age, a pastor, a young father of 2 beautiful small children, a beautiful wife, 30 years old, pastor of a mega church, making maybe $100,000 or more. Maybe not, I don't know. And yet, there is no and yet. So there is no like, well, and still no, this was his life. And it feels hopeless, right? Like, well, if he had everything, and he had even a nonprofit on this stuff, and yet he still, what about me? What about you? It's not about that. I'm here. I've survived. I am surviving every day. Even though all these things and criticism and blah, blah, I'm here providing not even just help for others, which is important, but just helping myself. If I had my wife here, she'd tell you that all that I'm saying is true because she lives with it every day. And it's not always horrible. There are seasons and there are moments, but I'm not going to sit here and hide or lie to you and say, oh, Jesus is enough. Of course he is. But this is a complicated thing, but there is hope. You can get better. I'm at an amazing place. My back and my whole stomach thing isn't hurting me anymore. And all of these things that I've mentioned, they've all helped me. This is how I've gotten through it all. But I would say loving yourself, having people that love you is the number one thing. So if you don't know what to do with your anxious son and you've taken him to therapy and you've done all these things and yet they're still at home or they're still dealing with stuff. Now, I'm not an expert in autism or some of these other things. I'm just strictly talking about anxiety, depression, like I call it the fad, fear, anxiety, and depression. I'm not an expert in bipolar, schizophrenia. I'm not. But in terms of these, as I call them, the soft diseases, fear, anxiety, and depression, they're not soft, but they seem to be more like you can still survive and you can still function with these things. That's my expertise. And that's where I feel like that's where I want to help people. And so share this. I know this is a bit long. I probably need to do something a little more succinct and kind of to the point. Maybe I'll edit this video, but in the meantime, you can go to my website. I do have some paid courses, davidtrig.com/ I think it's called Conference. So I encourage you to check that out. But if you want to just talk to someone about your life through Facebook Messenger, text, email, I would rather meet in person, of course. But especially for young adults, it doesn't matter to me. As long as we're communicating, then please reach out. Share this with someone that you love. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.